What's going on, Radiant Youth? My name is Sam Canchola, and my wife Az and I get to serve as your Central Youth pastors here at Radiant. And I'm so glad you're here with us on the first Sunday of the new year, because you're starting your year off with your church, ready to learn and build your faith. And I'm excited this morning because I get to kick off our new series, The Other Side, which this is designed for the fresh starts and big changes that we all seek in this new year. And the way we're gonna do this is by focusing on the Israelites. Everybody say Israelites. Yeah, big word. The Israelites' journey out of the wilderness and into the promised land. And the best part, spoiler alert, is this ultimately leads to Jesus's new covenant with us believers. So let's jump right into it. All right, let me get a show of hands. How many of y'all are forgetful? Go ahead, raise your hands, come on. I know it's early, let's see it. Raise your hands if you're forgetful. Like you forgot what you ate just 3 days ago. Yeah, that's me. You put your hands down. Now, whether you put your hands up or not, I'm sure you know someone who is forgetful. And I think we can all agree it's pretty frustrating to deal with forgetfulness with ourselves or with other people. And sometimes it's small things like a pen or your phone, while other times it might be a lot more important. Like for example, take summer camp, or if you were baptized recently, for some of you, this was a massive moment in your spiritual walk. But without consistent reminders of those moments, we suffer the consequences of forgetfulness, and we fall back into things we wanted to change. And as I was preparing this message for you, it made me wonder, how often do we forget the important spiritual things, like how good and faithful God is? Which leads me to the question, which is a pretty big question, that I want you to unpack with your small group leader. And the question is, have you forgotten God's faithfulness in your life? Maybe you experienced him at camp or at Vibe, but it's been a long time since you've seen him move like that. And I get it, it's easy to forget. But here's the good news. Even if we aren't faithful to God, he remains faithful because he cannot deny himself. In fact, Paul speaks of God's character in 2 Timothy 2:13, telling Timothy that if we are faithless, he remains faithful, for he cannot disown himself. This means that God's character is consistent and reliable even when people are not. Woo! That is good news. And I want you to carry this truth with you as we unpack this moment God had with Joshua and the Israelites. It's in Joshua 4. You see, Joshua is leading the Israelites out of the wilderness and towards the promised land. And as they cross the Jordan, God tells the Israelites to build a memorial to remember his faithfulness. And you can follow along on the screen. This is what he says in Joshua chapter 4. He says, when the whole nation had finished crossing the Jordan, the Lord said to Joshua, choose 12 men from among the people, one from each tribe, and tell them to take up 12 stones. Everybody say 12. 12 stones from the middle of the Jordan, from right there where the priests are standing, and carry them over with you and put them down at the place where you stay tonight. So Joshua called together the 12 men he had appointed from the Israelites, one from each tribe, and said to them, go over before the ark of the Lord your God into the middle of the Jordan. Each of you is to take up a stone on your shoulder, according to the number of the tribes of the Israelites, to serve as a sign among you. In the future, everybody say future. In the future, when your children ask you, what do these stones mean? Tell them that the flow of the Jordan was cut off before the ark of the covenant of the Lord. When they crossed the Jordan, the waters of the Jordan were cut off. These stones, everybody say these stones are to be a memorial to the people of Israel forever. You see, the purpose of these stones was to set a physical reminder for the Israelites to recall how faithful God had been. Because like us today, it was easy for them back then to forget too. And I mean, think about it. How often do we forget all that God has done in our life? Like really, take a moment and think about how God came through for you last year. Laying these stones was intended to help them remember, but it would also help the generations after come to know God as well, because they pointed to God's faithfulness. And as we enter into the new year, I want you to think of new rules for a new season, just like the Israelites. And today's is this: remember God's faithfulness in your life. When we remember God's faithfulness, it helps us trust Him again when we walk through difficulty. That's why it's said in Deuteronomy 4:9 to only be careful and watch yourselves closely, so that you do not forget the things your eyes have seen or let them fade from your heart as long as you live. I love that, because He says, don't forget how you've seen God provide for you supernaturally. Don't forget seeing God protect you through those storms. Like the Israelites, we need a reminder. And when we remember God's faithfulness, it helps us trust Him again when we walk through difficulty. And that might be you today. You might be watching this and can't help but think about the pain, the hurt, or just the disappointment of last year. And while I may not know your situation, I'm reminded of how God came into some of my own lowest points and how He proved to be reliable and faithful. So if that's you, I want to encourage you to talk to your small group leader or your youth director. That's why they're there this morning. It's for you. Now, Radiant Youth, I love you so much. And before we head to small groups, I have a huge favor to ask. Would you get creative this week in reminding yourself that God is faithful? For the Israelites, it was stones. For you, maybe it's a sticky note on your mirror with scripture. Maybe it's framing a picture of an answered prayer. Or maybe it's just writing in your journal in big Sharpie writing, God is faithful. Whatever way you remember best, make it happen. Because when you remember God's faithfulness, you can be confident He will provide for you again. See you guys soon.